The views and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the views of any on-site institutions unless explicitly stated.
What's up, everybody? My name is Steve Vanderwall.
And I'm Justin Klosser.
And we're your hosts of Cannabis Cum Laude, a podcast devoted entirely to cannabis. We're going to talk cultivation, business, medicine, politics, culture, advocacy, and everything in between.
The cannabis industry is complicated. It's robust. It has a lot of moving parts. And it's our job to help you understand it just a little bit better. So tune in every week for a brand new episode. And if you have a question that you'd like answered on the show, send it on over to questions@cannabiscumlaude.com. Thanks. Enjoy the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cannabis Cum Laude. Justin and Steve here to talk to you about some more listener questions and common misconceptions. Can't wait to get into it. How about you, Steve?
I'm excited. Last episode was awesome. I learned you're dropping some knowledge bombs.
So we're going to kind of be all over the place here. There is one thing that I want to clean up that I realized maybe not everybody would understand from our breeding episodes with Rob Bonfiglio. We mentioned phenohunting, but we didn't really explain what that is. And so if you don't know already, that might be kind of a confusing term. So what is a phenohunt? Essentially, a phenohunt is short for phenotype, and a hunt means like you're searching, right? And so what a phenotype is the physical characteristics that are displayed by any organism, but in this case, a cannabis plant. Whereas your genotype is the genes that you have within you or your DNA, right? So a phenohunt is like something that you're doing when you have maybe a new seed pack, or you just made a cross because you're getting into breeding, or you've been into breeding or whatever. But if you've been into breeding, you probably know what I'm talking about. A phenohunt is when you have your new offspring and you run a bunch of them because there's going to be some variety in there. That variety is different phenotypes. And so a phenohunt is looking for which phenotype you want to continue working with, whether that be keeping it for a mom for clones, just for growing, or for future breeding projects, what have you. So that's phenohunt in a nutshell.
What do you look for in a good pheno? And when do you hunt? Is it during veg? Is it during flower?
The whole thing, really, right? So for me, if I'm putting out a bunch of plants, I'm going to be looking in veg at structure. If I know right off the bat that I only want to keep a certain number of those, I will probably start whittling them away quick because I don't want to waste the time, money, and nutrients on plants that look like they're going to be crappy to end up having them be crappy, right? However, the caveat here is sometimes those small, scraggly plants with terrible structure produce fire. Sometimes it happens, which in a breeder's world, that's great because then you can take that and work with that and give it good structure, and then you have fire with structure, right? That's kind of the idea behind breeding is taking something that is less than perfect and making it better, right? And it should always be a goal to improve whatever you're working on, not just to like make something random and I put a cool name on this thing that I crossed from two different bag seeds. No clue what they are. You know what I mean? Like, by all means, cross your bag seeds, have fun, play around, but don't like try and sell those things. You know.
Do you think? Would you recommend maybe keeping a notebook or something during the process?
100%.
Say you got
100%.
Say you got like 6 plants or something, and you're here's week 2. I noticed this is good. Just to kind of help you, and at the end you can kind of go back and.
That's exactly what you should be doing. If you're just growing for flower and you're just trying to find a strain that you want to work with, and you're kind of low maintenance and not, it's not necessary per se, because at the end of the day, you're getting rid of some. But there is always that possibility that you are going to want to be more involved and you are going to want to do more in the future. And you're going to really wish that you would have taken notes so that you can improve upon what you were doing. You should be taking notes really throughout all aspects of your grow. I watered in at this pH today. I watered in at this EC today. I saw that this plant had goofy looking leaves because of this. I tried to fix it with this. Then 3 days later, you can go, what the hell did I put in there?
Yeah.
Then you know.
Yeah.
I put a gallon in each pot or a half a gallon in each pot today. You know what I mean? Like, then you can gauge how much water you're putting in versus how fast it's drying out. And depending on how much you want to be feeding it or whatever schedule you have devised, you can adjust your watering amount based on when you want it to dry out, right? Which you can do without a notebook, but it just makes it way easier, right? Just like most aspects in life. But if you're planning on breeding, 100% notebook. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to go into it with a goal, know what you're trying to do, what you're hoping to find out of the back end, and then select for those traits. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking to improve upon the structure and you have one that's falling over, that one probably doesn't even need to go into flower, like adios.
Yeah.
But you do want to flower out multiple candidates for that Phenohunt because at the end of the day, we're growing for flower.
Yeah.
So, and you need to know what they're producing on those plants. Okay, I think we kicked that pretty well. What do you want to dive into next?
I have a personal question, or not a personal question, but a question that I'm interested in. I'm transitioning, first grow I ever did was outdoors. Then I went to indoor organics. And now I'm transitioning to full hydro rock wool. And, I had always just gotten clones from friends, and which has been fine. I've been really lucky to get good clones. I have good grower friends. But the reality is if you want to do it right, you should do it all yourself. So as somebody who's going to be cultivating in rock wool and also going to be having a small mom tent, what do you recommend to grow your moms in? Do I grow them in rock wool? I've heard you can grow in anything. I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, so you can grow it in anything, right? And if it's a mother, you don't have to worry about necessarily transplanting that into your flower grow, depending on how you do it. I'm not a mom keeper, if you will. I'm like a generational, like I take a clone, that clone is now my new mom. You know what I mean? When it grows up, I'll take a clone from that.
Yeah.
And they just keep going. Some people argue genetic drift. Some people are going to say I'm doing it wrong. Some people are going to say that clones from a mother stock that came from a seed are stronger and more vigorous. I'm here to tell you I've not seen a reduction in vigor over the past course of however long, and I've been running the same strain the entire time I've been growing pretty much. I like about a year in, I grabbed this and I've had it the whole time, right? It doesn't get worse. It honestly only gets better because you become better as a grower. And so could they have been better maybe if I kept that seed mom? Maybe, but how much? And then how much stress would that mom undergo having been transplanted and root bound and transplanted and cut and transplanted? You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, I'd just rather have a fresh plant, new roots. Yeah. That's how I do it. But if you are keeping a mom, could be in whatever. So following my program, if I was you, I would keep a mom in rock wool because you're not really keeping a mom. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're just, it's
as long as I always have cuts.
Intermediary stage, right? As long as you have a cut, you have genetics. Yeah. Like you're good to go. And to speak to that, people charge like anywhere from $500 to $50,000, like Rob was telling us, for a single cut. If it was inferior to have that genetics, do you think people would pay $50,000 for it?
No.
You get what I'm saying? Because like I don't know. They would only ever want seeds because, and in my opinion, I think if you're going to be breeding, you should be growing from seed anyway, unless there's like you have a friend who has clones, you want to work your male, but like you should definitely find your own male or whatever, find your niche, something that belongs to you. Don't make your staple other people's cuts.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's back on the breeding topic.
It is crazy though, because I've had a couple of conversations with him over the years, and hearing how much I was just on Boston Clove Company's website the other day, and craft cuts, breeder cuts, $500. I mean, for a branch. I mean, and it's not just any branch. And if you're running a business from it, and you can get 500 clones off that and plant. I mean, it's well worth the investment.
Yeah.
But to just think that there's going to be people in New York who get nursery licenses who make a living selling very high dollar branches. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but it's real.
Absolutely. 100. Well, so I wouldn't expect those nurseries to, I mean, I guess they'll probably carry breeder cuts now that I'm really thinking about it, but I would expect them to also have the very economical, in my opinion, still pricey, $25 a cut. You know what I mean? Like that's doable for the home grower, right? And that's really what
get you a banging end product.
Right.
It's
like, they're just so easy to make to me. That's crazy to me that like, just clone your own people. Anyway,
yeah.
Which is actually a great segue into the next question. How do I clone? Right? Well, there's a million ways to do it. You're talking about having a mother. I would just say clone into Rockwool for you, or you could do Aeroponics and then like our mutual friend that we know, cut your cube, set the roots inside there, pinch it so that it doesn't open back up, and you'd be good to go with Rockwool. Right? Easy. Recommended. I highly, 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 highly recommend water rooting, bare root rooting. They just go faster for some reason. They
How's that work?
are vigorous. So either DWC or Aeroponics. Rob likes DWC, preaches it, right? DWC cloning, which is deep water culture, which is essentially you have a bucket with an aerator inside of it, and you have like some foam discs. You put your cut inside the disc. It dangles down into the aerated water that has some kind of clone solution in it. Clonax, Olivia's. There's a million. I feel bad that I can't think of more than that because I'm not trying to like point in any direction. I personally do use Clonax. They don't pay me. I use Clonax. Never had issues, so I don't switch. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes. That's what I was introduced to. It works. Why change?
So how does that work? So I take a cut off my mother, and then instead of dipping it in the Clonax, I just throw it in this already Clonax solution, and then what happens after that? How does that work?
So I wouldn't recommend this in DWC, I guess, and honestly, probably in the Aero Cloner, you're still getting some wash off, but I do still use the gel before I put it in the collar. Okay. I've found that they seem to come a little bit quicker and more roots. Just something about having that auxin readily available there and a higher concentration with the gel. I think that before it gets fully washed off by the water, it actually gets uptaken into that callus material and like helps it stimulate it quicker. So I do still use the gel. It is more of an expense. You don't need it. You can 100% do it with just a nutrient solution, but you cut your clone. I was starting out with larger ones originally when I was doing them at like 6-7 inches. And I found out that most of the roots are coming out of the very bottom, which makes for an interesting transplant because you have like a very top heavy thing with like no support. And I tried to bury it into the soil a little bit. And you could probably get away with that if you water properly, but if you saturate your medium, like most people are trained to do when you transplant, and then let it drip out, obviously, to container capacity so that the roots have to then search through the whole container to find the roots, you end up with the potential for Pythium, right? Which did happen to me, truthfully. The very first time I was using the Aero Cloner, I had these long clones. I was like, I gotta get nice ones, right? Nice big ones. That's what I see. I want to make sure they go down. They get touched by the mist, right, in the Aero Cloner, and they were just like top heavy. I couldn't get them supported, so I buried them in soil a little bit. And then what do you know? Here we come with a bunch of damping off, which is what Pythium is, where they start to fall over. Yeah. Granted, mine didn't actually fall over yet. I caught it ahead of time. I saw it and I went, you're so fresh that I'm not even going to bother trying to save you. Adios. You know what I mean? Like,
garbage.
See it. Yeah. Maybe that was the wrong move, but like, I hadn't really wasted much time on them. Just sitting in the cloner, adios. Right. Anyway.
You recommend the Aero Cloner?
I do 100% recommend the Aero Cloner. Rob says he's had wonderful results with the DWC. I haven't used one, so I can't speak to the difference between the two.
Okay.
He says he gets like 100%. I've seen just about 100%. And if you do them right around like 4 or 5 inches, they are a really nice size. Man, in like 10 days, you got good roots. If you let it go 14 days, man, you got a beard on these things.
No shit.
And they're just, it's almost too much and like hard to get in the soil without shoving them on top of each other. You know what I'm saying?
Kidding.
But, so you're going to get what I would do is take like a 6 or 7 inch cut Then I go in, I get off all the little ancillary branches on the side until you got 3 leaves on top, which was, oh man, I wish I could remember the name of the paper. There was a scientific paper published that said that was the best method in order to have the best root growth, was to have 3 leaves uncut. Sometimes if there's a lot going on, I still will cut the leaves just to reduce the foliage, get rid of those micro licenses, which would be like the end third. You know what I mean? The tips, like a third of the leaf. I would just I like fold them on top of each other so that they're in a stack, kind of like 5, 7, however many are going on, and just one cut. That way, nice and clean, nice little round shape, good to go. Reduces humidity essentially and the ability for leaves to like lay on top of each other with microclimates. Maybe it reduces rooting potential, you know what I mean? But if you're really trying to cram your cloner full, it's going to help you with those microclimates.
Now I have another question.
Yep.
How long between I take my clone off my mom, I want to turn it into a mother? How long between when I plant that clone till I can start taking clones off that?
5, 6, 7 nodes. 7 nodes, really, if you're trying to take a clone. They say you can top your plant at like 5 to 6 nodes. So I guess maybe you would want to go even more than that, because when you're taking a clone, right? And so I didn't actually finish this thought before. I said you should take 6 or 7 inches, and then after you cut all the ancillary branches off, recut it just below a node at a 45-degree angle, roughly 4 to 5 inches will be perfect. Drop it in your little collar. You're going to have a little nub that's sticking below. That whole thing is going to probably sprout roots, and it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Okay.
That made me lose track of your question. I'm sorry.
How long until
can take cuts? Yeah. So I would go up to where there's like probably 9 or 10, right? Where you can cut off like 4 or 5 of them, still have 4 or 5 remaining, and then you can strip those, clean the bottom, like garbage the bottom one so that you get a nice fresh cut that you're sticking into your cloning gel, putting it into either your Rockwool cube or your Oasis cube, or some people go direct into soil. Some people actually claim to get results from just sticking it in water, which I've seen with houseplants, so I don't think that it's far-fetched, but I think you would probably have to change that water pretty regularly. So in my opinion, you should just use something with aeration.
Yeah.
But yeah, stick it in there. 10 to 14 to 21 days if you're using cubes. Sometimes it, depending on your environment, could take that long. You're off to the races.
That's that easy.
Pretty much, yeah. Get a little T5 light is all you need. A little 24-watt tube light. Put it over the top of your cloner or dome or whatever you have going on. If you're in a cloner, some people like to use some kind of cleaner to prevent biological buildup. So you use like clear res or something like that. If you are in a dome, depending on what your environment's like, you might want to use a heat mat underneath your tray.
I've heard that.
To help warm the root zone, because that's kind of what goes on in the natural world, right? Is like the earth, the crust of the earth and everything in there is a little bit warmer than what's going on in the air, depending on time of year,
sure.
Right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Sterilize your tools in between cuts. I mean, if you're trying to do it right, if you're in the same plant, same strain, not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're going cross strains, not the most crucial thing, but there is the potential to spread viruses, spread pathogens, spread insect eggs, anything of that nature. If you don't like do a quick alcohol wipe in between switching to plants.
Okay.
Yeah. So we also had a question come in on transplanting. A couple other questions as well. Sorry, that's why I was just shuffling through them. The one that I want to get to, though, is transplanting. And the question is, when do I transplant? Right? So I'm going to attack this from the frame of prior to flower, right? If you are, I guess we'll just do the whole thing. When you're cloning up, if you start seeing roots sticking out of your holes a little bit, you can do nice when you're it can't be the day that you water, but if it's nice and dry, you can kind of grab the cup, grab the stem. If you're in a solo cup, if you're in a fabric, that's entirely different, and kind of pull it up. If you can see a whole bunch of roots going on, like it looks like it's pretty well filled out, it's time to transplant that solo cup or whatever small pot that you're in. If you're in actual nursery pots, you can, if you start to see a lot of roots coming out of the holes in the bottom, it's time to transplant. When you do that, I always recommend doing like a little bit of a breakup of the roots, especially if you're in fabric. This is an entirely different story. You can kind of even really leave them in there root bound, and it's not a big deal until you're ready to transplant them when you're in fabric, because they have that aeration. They're getting air pruned, and so therefore they're not going to be girdling each other. They just kind of cut and start forming new little babies. Yep. So that's what I personally recommend fabric. But if you're going to be in plastic pots or clay or something like that, do the pull test, right? Grab it when it's almost dry. Don't let it desiccate, but almost dry. Pull it up by the stem. Look at the roots. If there's a bunch, it's time to transplant. Break them up a little bit. That's going to help stimulate new root growth, and it's also going to prevent them from staying in that container shape and then like struggling to branch out. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's that. And then as far as before flower goes, I used to take the approach of transplanting like 5 to 7 days before flower to get them brand new into the pots and give them room to expand, right? I no longer really take this approach. I kind of like to have them almost established in the pot, not like already root bound, but almost established. So with this cannabis plant, we are growing it to kill it. And so if it's root bound in the pot by the end of the time you're done growing it, it doesn't really matter because you're going to just kill it anyways. So if you go into flower with a mostly established plant, not root bound already, because you could run into problems and it will be really hard to keep up with watering, but mostly established where they've been in there a week and a half, 2 weeks almost, then put them into flower. Then they're going to dry back quicker. You're going to be able to water them more regularly. You're going to be able to get them to uptake more nutrients, which is going to ultimately have a bigger yield. The longer you have in between waterings, and this goes for making sure you have enough aeration in your soil as well, because the longer you have in between waterings, the less opportunity there is to feed, more likelihood for deficiencies, definitely more likelihood for decreased yield, because it's just not getting as much, right? And if it doesn't have as much ingredients, it can't make as much cake.
Love it.
End of the day,
yep.
Right? So that's probably a good place to end for the questions. For this round, we'll end up doing another episode with some more coming in the future. I do want to kind of update people on what's been going on, what's coming up in these last few minutes. First and foremost, we went to the #Hydro grand reopening this past weekend, which was absolutely awesome. Right?
Yeah, Rob and Jackie, if you guys are listening, you guys know how to throw an event. To see where ever since I've known them, they've always done really well in that shop. And to see them transition into a new building and throw a banger an event with big vendors and hundreds of people came through there. Like it was incredible. And now, being able to transition into the carnival in the next month.
If that's any indication of what the carnival is going to be like, because they did not promote that at all.
No.
If you notice, like at all. It was kind of like if you knew, you knew, or if you saw the post last minute.
Yeah.
And if that's any indication of what this 3-month prefaced carnival is going to be like, I am stoked. Which, by the way, if you need tickets for that, we do still have some. Contact us.
Yeah, to send us a DM. I've had a couple people reach out on both Facebook and Instagram saying, do you have tickets? So just let us know. We can get you a ticket. We're in the Monroe County, Wayne County region. We can get them to you. Or worst comes to worst, we can mail them. But just reach out and ask us. We can get them to you.
Absolutely. And then we also have kind of transitioned the Facebook group that we had. It used to be the Cannabis Cum Laude private group or something silly. I didn't like the name, right? So we switched it over to the Cum Laude Coalition, which is kind of supposed to be like an endearing term for you listeners. And so hopefully you guys will take that in stride and like it. But head on over to that page if you haven't checked it out already, Cum Laude Coalition. And then when you're done doing that, go on over to our Discord server where we don't have to worry about whether Mark Zuckerberg and his goonies are going to take down your content or put you in timeout for 24 hours to a week or whatever it is these days. So yeah, we'll have the link to that in the show notes. And then other than that, if you feel like supporting the show, push subscribe. Doesn't cost a thing, but if you want to support the show financially, head on over to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/Cannabis Cum Laude, or click the link in the show notes. And other than that, I don't think I have anything.
I just want to say, as a lot of people have asked me throughout the years, what can I do to support your business and support your endeavors? And I'll tell you the easiest thing and one of the most effective things to do outside of buying a product, and I think to some extent this is in the business that we're in media, like, comment, share, talk about it, spread the word.
Tell a friend.
Seriously, because that matters. That is, likes, comments, and shares are capital in this business.
Yep.
The more likes, comments, and shares and downloads we have, the more likely are we to bring on sponsors and to be able to, do field trips and do all this shit that we want to do. So if you ever want to know how you can support the podcast, at the very least, like, comment, share, subscribe. It's very easy and it helps us. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. And with that, people, elevate your state of mind.
Thanks to our friends here at Rockbox Recording and Production in Rochester, New York. They are a full professional podcast and video studio designed by a radio guy for podcasters. Audio, video, voiceovers, editing, whatever. Mouth off at Rockbox at rockbox.com.
You can follow Cannabis Cum Laude on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Cannabuzz. Type Cannabis Cum Laude into your search bar and you should be able to find us, but the links will also be posted in the episode notes as well. If you want to help support the show, head on over to Patreon, and that will ensure that we're able to keep the best quality sound and video coming to you on a regular basis. And if you liked what you heard today, please don't forget to rate and review the show.